something, Mr. Organizer? You're recording. There it is. You're recording this meeting. Be sure to let everyone know that they're being recorded. Everyone, I want to let you know you are being recorded. There's your disclaimer.
There you go. Welcome.
All right, I'm going to share my screen, open up my PowerPoint here. Let me get this open. Things take time. All right. So, okay. Since it's 11:05, would we like to get started?
I'm ready.
Okay. Well, without further ado, we will get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. You know, we're really excited to do this. And as we were discussing prior to starting this is something that we'd like to turn into even like a lecture series because there's so much information. And it's so important. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking time out of your day. And thank you for caring enough to inform yourselves on, you know, little steps you can do to help out. My name is Nick VanHorn. I'm a assistant professor of philosophy. I'll be co-presenting along with Professors Krausz and Minkovsky. Overview of the presentation, right? It's titled Plates for the Planet, a simple solution to sustainable eating. I'll begin by just offering some general remarks. Then I'll pass the mic over to Professor Minkovsky, who will go over some public health impacts resulting from industrial agriculture and CAFOs, which are kind of the focus of this. Then I'll take it back over and talk about some environmental consequences, and we'll finish with Professor Krausz going over some really good, simple, manageable steps that we can take, all right, to make our diet more sustainable. So I'm just going to get into it. First question, why focus on diet, right? That the important question. Often environmental issues, whether it's the Pacific garbage patch or the global invasion of plastics or the 6th great extinction or global climate change, they often seem too big for us to handle. They can leave us feeling hopeless. They can also give rise to, you know, ecological despair. But here we have a daily activity, right, that has the ability to make a big impact. I should ask real quick, can everyone mute because I hear a little feedback, that's all. So here's something that we can do on in a daily basis that can make a very big impact. And as you'll see today, right, our diet not only affects our personal health, it's not just about you individually, it also impacts public health, animal welfare, the management and distribution of food, water, and land, I should add there, regional ecosystems and global ecosystems. Additionally, you know, by illustrating the variety of all these, the variety of issues resulting from our diets, I think it can reveal the interconnectedness and the interdependency of all life on this planet, humans included, right? We are part of this planet. We are not separate and standing above or beyond this planet. We are nature. And I think only by recognizing this can we shift our thinking and our perspective, right, towards a more moral approach and to encourage us and beckon us to want to change, right? Because we can look at the figures all day, but we have to actually have that impetus to change. So, you know, so what does our food system look like, right? One could be forgiven for thinking we live in a bountiful cornucopia, right? We have so much food that is produced. Hell, we throw away a lot of food every year. But is it that? Or is it something more deadly? In 1928, Hoover vowed to put a chicken in every pot and a car in every garage. And thanks to industrial processes, that's largely been actualized. However, what we're seeing is that more people are malnourished, whether that's underfed or overfed or just lacking in essential vitamins and minerals, right? People are more malnourished and the environment is suffering from a multitude of factors. Alarmingly, and hence the focus on CAFOs in this presentation, 99% of animals destined for consumption are raised in these large-scale industrial agriculture operations, right? So here they are, right? So on the left-hand side, you have a picture of a CAFO, right? That's the term I use. It's short for concentrated animal feeding operation. On the right, you see large-scale monoculture, generally used for producing the feed for these crops and for other things that we call food and sell in the stores. So as we'll see, While these forms of agriculture can make more meat and crops more prevalent, the effects produced by them are simply unsustainable. So the first thing we're going to go over are the public health consequences resulting from this large-scale agricultural processes. And so I'm going to pass the mic over to Professor Minkovsky. So I'm going to end my screen share and I'm going to let her share her screen. So let's see. Yeah, there we go. All right, and I'm going to mute myself until she has finished.
Okay, hello. Okay, I'm sharing, right?
Correct.
Okay. In my part as the professor of biology and actually specifically professor of microbiology, I will look at in the first part on the effects of our diet on our bodies. When I talk about our bodies, I'm not just talking about, our organs that we know. I'm also talking about the whole ecosystem inside our bodies, so-called human microbiome. So, and in the second part, I will talk more specifically about the effects of CAFOs on public health. So I'll start with this not because I think obesity is, aesthetics issue. It's a huge public health issue, and we are currently facing obesity and overweight crisis. You see that from early 60s to I have data for 2015 from CDC. We have more than half of the population either obese or overweight. And again, this is not just the aesthetics of like people being fat. It is a huge effect on multiple facets of our life in terms of disease. So it's cancer, it is heart disease, and right now facing with the COVID-19 pandemics, became known that being overweight is one of the highest risk factors for morbidity and mortality due to COVID-19. So when first scientists started to study obesity and their effect of obesity on health, they started asking questions. Is it genes? And as you can see from this slide, the answer is no. Genes in human genomes could be implicated, and that's not enough to explain. Is it our wealth? So you see in this graph, there is some sort of correlation between the GDP per capita and obesity prevalence, but countries like United States and Micronesia, Kiribati and others in Polynesia that are not they're not wealthy. Still, the level of obesity is overwhelming. So yes and no. The theory of calories in, calories out turned out that our physical activity is actually increasing. So we're putting out more calories, but we're still, the population is still overweight and obese. So here we come to the issue that is here at hand. It is more likely that our interrelationship between the humans and the microbes that humans carry specifically in their gastrointestinal tract, that is probably is implicated here. So sure you see that the composition of human microbiome varies significantly. Different colors represent different groups of microbes. And you see how in changing of human microbiome is implicated in various diseases. So excuse me, but I'm going to be rushing through, so only highlights of the slides. So what is here to blame? It is most likely our Western style high fat, high sugar diet. And what kind of diet is helpful? The diet that is rich in fibers and so-called microbiota accessible carbohydrates, which is mostly present in fruits and vegetables and our other plant-based foods that we should be looking at. Several studies show that animal there's somebody who's there's noise, background noise. Could you please mute yourself? So animal product rich diet leads to inflammation. Here you see that animal products meat.
We've lost your screen share.
Really?
Yep.
Strange.
You mean to pull mine up, Natasha? Okay.
Can you see it now?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So animal, the dietary product, protein that comes from animals is implicated into atherosclerosis, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and it is mediated by gut microflora. Food additives, again, salt, hypertension due to salt is mediated by lactobacilli. The emulsifiers and other food additives induce obesity, intestinal inflammation, and dysfunction. Okay, so now I'm moving on to the health risks from CAFAs. And I'll start with the mentioning that our current problem with COVID-19 actually went from bats, and COVID-19 is zoonotic infection because the virus circulated in bats, and there are multiple of these viruses that are circulating in animal population, and in certain conditions they can jump into human population and may cause severe disease in unprepared human host due to, as I call, Goldilocks combination of properties. Like for COVID-19, it is high infectivity level and not high and not too low level of mortality that it causes. Now, I may disappoint you, but it seems like COVID-19 is not the only issue that we're facing. Flu. The flu virus circulates in multiple populations, like ducks. There's canine flu virus, and in humans, and pigs can serve as a mixing vessel. And due to the fact that the virus has a segmented genome, it can exchange the parts of its genome, coming up with a possibly a novel pandemic virus. Another problem with the situation is that growing pigs in high density populations, as well as poultry in high density populations, requires oftentimes widespread vaccination, which may lead to selecting new viral types, because vaccination will develop population with uniform immunity, and certain virus genotypes like H1N1, H3 and 2. So the viral mutants, viral mutations are due to error-prone replication of the virus. These new mutants may be favored. So these are some of these pandemic type viruses that came out from mixing and matching of the genotypes of the flu virus mostly in pig population in confined animal operations. And the other pandemic that we are most likely facing is the pandemic of antibiotic resistance. So antibiotic resistance may cause us 10 million deaths per year, which will dwarf the problem of COVID-19 that is happening right now. So antibiotic resistance happens when microorganisms develop ability to defeat the drugs designed to kill them. We also have multi-drug resistant microbes and pan-resistant microbes that are resistant to all possible antibiotics that are there. So this slide outlines how the resistance may develop. You see that in a population of bacteria, one bacterium with mutation may survive the antibiotic onslaught, and it will develop into the resistant colony. Now, if you treat a population of animals in confined animal operations, and they do it not just for disease prevention, but also for growth enhancement, you might be dealing with microbes that are not dangerous. But these non-dangerous microbes can exchange their antibiotic resistance with the harmful microbes and come up with the resistant colony of, for example, MRSA. And then we will have a huge issue in our healthcare. As you can see here, it became known in 1977, and FDA proposed to remove penicillin and tetracycline from animal feed, but we are still, the industry is still not convinced, and as recently as 2013, there was FDA issued guidance for industry, which calls for voluntary adoption of judicious use of antibiotics. And these are so to conclude, I want to suggest that we look at the issue of how we get our food and what we eat with a view of one health concept, thinking about the fact that human health is highly dependent on the health of the wildlife, as well as on the health of pets and livestock, and on the way how we do our farming. currently global trade and travel accelerate the issues that we are having, and it always often presented as inevitable consequence of progress. But it seems like this problems are results of conscious choices that are made by humans in conditions of current economic model, and I suggest that we should start to rethink the model. And with this, I will stop sharing. Oops.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And I'll go ahead and pick back up where you left off. So I'm going to share my screen and get back into that PowerPoint. Take a minute to look up here. I'm going to now have to fast forward all the way through. Sorry, everyone. And here we are. So first off, I want to say thank you so much, Professor Minkovsky. That was awesome. So much good information there that taught me a lot, actually. Just as she had mentioned, every single one of these slides could be its own presentation, right? So I'm going to kind of breeze over some things, right? This is just a starting point to begin a conversation and to begin us reflecting on these various ideas, various positions. So I want to look at some environmental costs. First and foremost, food mismanagement here. I'm actually missing another slide here, so let me try something else. Sorry to do this at the middle of a presentation, but I'm sharing my desktop with you because I want this presentation. I made some updates. So can everyone see my screen? Everything good? Yeah. All right. So the first thing I'd like to look at is food and land mismanagement. Look, one thing we want to look at is whenever we're thinking about the sustainability of our food systems, we want to ask, well, how are we managing our food and our land? One way to look at this is just to simply look how much kilograms of grain it requires to produce a kilogram of lamb or a kilogram of beef, right? There's a slide later in this presentation that talks about soy or grain or nuts and various fruits and vegetables in contrast to these numbers, which are much less, right? So this is important, though, for two reasons. Not only is this an issue of how are we using the food that we produce, right? Are we using it to produce all this grain and just to feed it to animals and then eat those animals, right? This is a problem because, as you see here, a full third of the annual global harvest of grains is being fed to livestock. When you think about how many malnourished individuals are living right now, we could use this food to feed people directly. Importantly, right, this food that we're growing simply for livestock could be better spent, right? So we look at the land use. Pay attention to these lines right here. Agricultural land, 77% devoted to livestock, meat and dairy, right? Where you look at the global calorie supply, only 18%, right? That's not very efficient. That's not sustainable in the least. So there's also an issue of energy mismanagement. When we're using a more comprehensive analysis that includes all inputs, such as fertilizers and pesticides, the breakdown looks more like this, right? To produce 1 calorie of beef, you're looking at 40 calories of fossil fuel. 1 calorie of milk, 14 calories of fossil fuel. 1 calorie of grain, 2.2 calories of fossil fuel. One way I like to approach this topic is, look, we're always going to have blood on our hands, so to speak, regardless of the diet we choose. There's no such thing as an absolutist, purist diet, right? But we have to try to minimize the harms of our diet. So let's see. Water mismanagement is also an issue. So it's not just the food, it's not just the land. How much water is required to produce a pound of beef? Around 1,800 gallons of water, right? That's a problem. Again, not only because we have people that lack access to fresh water, right, and people who lack access to adequate sanitation facilities, it's not just a human problem. This is also an environmental problem. We do not have an infinite wellspring of fresh water on this planet, so we need to be conscious and responsible with how we manage that water. I'm just going to keep compounding the issues here. Water pollution. It's not just the fact that we are mismanaging the water. CAFOs and the feed for livestock also leads to water pollution. This top picture on the right is a picture of lagoons. You see those big muddy pits right there. Those are big lakes of excrement, toxic waste, right? So unlike human waste, which has to be treated at waste treatment facilities, at CAFOs, they put them in lagoons, right? The urine and the feces, and they just sit there. Later in the presentation, I'll mention how this affects the air, but for now, in terms of water pollution, this seeps down through the ground, right? And it leaks into our underground aquifers, right? Water supplies. Also leaches out into nearby waterways. In addition to this, right, also the feed for livestock. When we look at monocultures are going to remove all that undergrowth underneath whatever they're growing, underneath their crop. That's one thing that happens. And what you're getting at a lot of these monocultures is the pesticide and fertilizer runoff, and it's leaching into our waterways and building algae, and leading to eutrophication and the dying off of various species in various aquatic species. Compounding it more, land degradation. Let me move this thing right here. When you look at the CAFOs themselves, where the animals are concentrated, right? We have overgrazing, right? Just complete overgrazing on that land, right? Does not give the land enough time to replenish itself. You have the waste runoff. But importantly, when you're looking at the feed operations, right? These monoculture feed crops, as a result of the tilling, right? We have compaction of the soil. And then we have the depletion of the soil microbiome, which leads to erosion. A lot of this is caused by the application of pesticides, fungicides, insecticides, fertilizers, all these things. And it's also the result of growing the same crop, right, over a vast expanse of land, right, which without adding any variety. And I'll speak to that when I talk about species extinction. So again, just going through this very quickly just to illustrate how many ways this impacts us. Deforestation. I'm going to read this for you. Typically, deforestation process starts when roads are cut through the forest, opening it up for logging and mining. Once the forest along the road has been cleared, commercial or subsistence farmers move in and start growing crops. But forest soils are too nutrient poor and fragile to sustain crops for long. After 2 or 3 years, the soil is depleted. Crop yields fall. The farmers let the grass grow and move on, and the ranchers move in. Little investment is needed to start raising cattle on cheap or abandoned land where grass is already growing, and the returns can be high, at least for a while. After just 5 to 10 years, overgrazing and nutrient loss turn the rainforest land that was once a storehouse of biological diversity into an eroded wasteland. Importantly, in the Amazon, cattle ranching is now the primary reason for deforestation. This is why I try to emphasize to people, simply your food, the meal on your plate, may involve something as seemingly far unrelated as deforestation. We need to keep this in mind. 6th grade extinction, right? While many people recognize the seriousness of species extinction, few connect this to the production of meat, right? But when we look at the production of meat, we're recognizing that it's the major driver of deforestation, one of the leading drivers of land degradation, pollution, climate change, overfishing, sedimentation, etc. Right. What I was saying earlier about looking at monocultures that are growing the same crop and they're using all these pesticides and all these fertilizers, you're reducing the amount of predators there. You're reducing the amount of animals that hunt those predators and those bugs. You're reducing the microbiome, the health of the soil, the variety of bacteria in that soil, right? That excess tilling, application of pesticides is leading to erosion. So you're removing the entire ecosystem, right? And all the animals that depend on that ecosystem, especially when you look at this happening in rainforests through deforestation, it's happening at a much greater extent. This is why I think it's very important to use polycultures, right? Using a variety of planting a variety of crops in the same area, and kind of scaling back our use of pesticides and fertilizers. It's important to ask, look, are we cooking our food or cooking the planet? Or what are the climate impacts on this? The livestock sector produces about 9% of direct global emissions of CO2. Looking at carbon dioxide here, carbon dioxide. And we see that through deforestation. As we clear out these forests, and then of course, as we build these monocultures, we are removing the plant life and the soil that is necessary for capturing and converting that carbon, right? When you have plant life, it can pull that carbon out of the air and pull it down into the soil and convert that. Well, we are losing that possibility when we just kind of wipe out all the plant life. However, methane is also is another factor here, and it's the often overlooked culprit, right? There's various sources, termite mounds and wetlands, some natural sources of methane, but there's some major anthropogenic sources, right? Important for our purposes here is waste treatment, manure, and enteric fermentation. Right, so when you look at methane and the sulfide, I think it's hydrogen sulfide, ammonia coming from lagoons, or you look at the bovine flatulence, right, whether that's they're burping or they're farting, all this methane is going into the atmosphere. Unlike CO2, methane is chemically broken down in the atmosphere. It's much hotter than carbon dioxide. To produce 1 kilogram of beef in a feedlot requires the equivalent of about 15 kilograms of CO2. All right, that's a lot. This little thing. So when we're looking at climate change, I think it's important when you're looking at the food on your plate, when you're thinking about it, it's not just what animal was harmed, right? Or it's not just, well, what store did you buy it at? You have to consider the land use change, the farm, the animal feed, the processing, the transport, the retail, the packaging. And when you start accounting for all of these measures, and you look at the greenhouse gas emissions per kilogram of food product, you see it very clearly that when we are given the option of going for beef or lamb or cheese or dairy, chocolate, even coffee, that one hurts, right? Versus some of our other nutritious food options that could lead to a very healthy diet, nuts, fruits, apples, root vegetables, etc., soy milk, maize, corn, tomatoes, wheat, and rye. And you see that such a vast difference. And when we're talking about responsibly managing the food that we are producing, this just demonstrates it so clearly, in my opinion. It won't let me switch. There we go. So I'm not going to go over some possible solutions because Professor Krausz will go over some of these things. So I'm going to kind of bring myself back to the meeting here.
Sure. Thank you. I can take over from here. Hello, everybody. How are we doing so far? Okay, let's see if I can share my screen. Yeah. Okay. There we go. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes.
All right, good. All right, so I'm not sure how much time I have left, but I approach this from a practical standpoint. You know, I'm an exercise scientist by nature. I'm used to giving advice and seeing people through advice. So, you know, we're definitely inundated by sometimes daily bad news about what's going on with the planet, and rightfully so, because there is some shocking things. But the good news is that there's really some practical things that we can all do that are not very challenging that Professor VanHorn kind of alluded to already. So the basis of my advice comes from some research, and this was published in 2019. That was the EAT-Lancet committee, and this was published in the Lancet Journal or commission.
Dan,
and
sorry to
basically,
interrupt. Are you able to go in theater mode?
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry about that.
No, thank you. Good? Nick, is that better?
It's not showing up for some reason.
Hmm.
You might have to go enable editing, maybe. I don't know.
Okay, let's try again.
Ah!
How about now?
Now I don't see your screen at all.
Okay. Let's go back. Share.
All right, we got your screen now.
What's that?
We got your screen now. Yeah.
All good?
Yep. Beautiful.
Okay, cool. So basically, this was kind of a landmark paper that was published, essentially consisting of professionals from 16 different countries, including environmental scientists, health professionals, political scientists, agriculture professionals. And essentially what they did was they looked at every available dietary guideline that was published by different countries. And there was about 84 of them, that countries that have official dietary guidelines. And they kind of overlaid that with what is known, what the previous two presenters have touched upon about the environmental impact of food. And shockingly, only about 4 countries, I believe it was Germany, Switzerland, France, and Qatar, gave any mention or any consideration of sustainability. And this is in, the 2015 to 2020 dietary guidelines. So basically something needs to change. So the purpose of this commission was to set a reference diet that could be used globally to get us to a sustainable food system. So some of these things Nick already touched upon. Over 800 million individuals live in food insecurity. Many more are consuming nutrient-poor diets that lead to chronic diseases. Now being the leading cause of death among everyone. So the goal was by 2050 to get to a sustainable food system that could feed an estimate of 10 billion people, which some estimates say that's what we're going to get to. The good news is they estimate we can do that, but some massive changes need to take place. So not only on the individual scale of what we eat, but how the food is produced, how it is transported, and obviously public policy to encourage all those things. So, I'm a numbers guy. I'm always about giving dietary advice. What you're looking at here really is just on the left-hand side, you see the EAT-Lancet recommendations, and these are in grams per day. And this is kind of referenced with the U.S. healthy diet, that's the USDA recommendations, the latest iteration of those, also compared to a Mediterranean diet, which has immense amount of research for its health and sustainability, and also to a vegetarian diet. And I think just what you're looking at in some of the highlights that I'll get to is, the drastic differences in grain consumption, if you look across that line item. But surprisingly, look at protein foods in grams. This is not a protein poor diet. This is the one thing I deal with a lot of athletes, and my specialty is kind of eating for performance enhancement. And the first thing I hear all the time when I talk about plant-based eating is protein, but that's certainly not the case. You're not protein deficient by any means. You will notice a drastic reduction in red meat consumption and poultry and egg consumption, but a drastic increase in nuts, in soy, beans, legumes, and other things of that nature. So it's just a shift in where we're getting our nutrients from. It's not a deficient in diet and nutrients by any means. And this is just another graph to illustrate, it goes by region, but if you just look at the red line globally, where we are at in our consumption of these different food products, and the dotted line kind of is their recommendation, the 100% of the dietary recommendation. So obviously it's easy to see where we're at in terms of our red meat consumption, way too much in general. Starchy vegetables, eggs, and then if you look down the bottom, we're very low in legumes, whole grains, and nuts. So what I get out of this is, here are my dietary recommendations to make these improvements. So what you see is the summary of what they came up with was, in general, and obviously this varies greatly by country, even by region of country, but in general, we need to consume about 50% less red meat as a population, added sugars and refined grains and other quote-unquote processed foods, and consume over 100% more of whole plant-based foods. So, you always see the dietary guidelines and the food pyramids, and then we've kind of shifted to the plate model. Well, this is kind of the plate model that they came up with. And essentially, you're filling half of your plate with local seasonal vegetables, maybe about 15% with whole grains, and then plant-based sources of protein, and much less with dairy and animal proteins, simply because of what you were just told. What I like to say is this is kind of an easy solution. This solves everything. Every day we are told, here's the diet for weight loss and for diabetes control and for cancer prevention. And now we have a diet for the environment. But the same thing solves almost all of these issues, which is amazing. So here we have an inverse pyramid that is showing the impact of these foods perfectly with the pyramid that is a recommendation of the intake of those foods. So if you make the majority of your consumption plant-based foods, you are not only improving your health with the phytonutrient content, you're not only reducing the caloric intake that leads to obesity, but you're also reducing the impact on the environment. So Harvard School of Public Health put out these nice little 5 recommendations, and for those who are watching or observing this, each of these are linked to resources that you can click to help you with that recommendation, so I won't go through those now for time purposes. But as I said before, prioritize plants. I'm very big into local, as was discussed, because not only of the resources it takes to produce, but also to transport and the healthfulness of those foods. So we tend to think that food is healthy no matter where it comes from. But on average, and statistics might differ, but our food travels about 1,500, sometimes 2,000 miles till it gets on our plates. And those foods, and the nutrients in those foods, will degrade over time and over distance and over handling. So you will be getting a better food the closer it is to where you are. As we said before, it goes without saying, minimize meat. I'm not saying, completely exclude meat. I think the vegetarian or vegan discussion is certainly for another time, but we definitely need to minimize our intake, and we need to eat better meat, in my opinion. Look at seafood. So seafood is not without foul. There is definitely some unsustainable seafood practices. I put a link in there to a very extensive website to look into that, but look into certain different regional seafood that is sustainable. Next couple slides, I'll show you guys some links into local resources to find local farmers markets and food products. And the last thing is eat mindfully. We tend to get anxious about what we eat, and we worry about the health impacts and the environmental impacts. But, I tell everybody, health is only one reason why I consider food. Food is culture, food is art, food is family, food is awesome. Embrace what you eat, but, make a statement not only for yourself, but for the environment with you. So slow down, think about what you're eating, reflect on what you're eating, plan it out, talk about it, go into better ways to source your food. I always make a joke in my health class. I ask kids what fresh food is, and a student raised his hand and said, "Oh, Subway, eat fresh." And I had to laugh. I said, that's a slogan. That's not necessarily a business practice. But just to test that theory out, I went into Subway, and I asked the poor teenager that was making my sandwich where the turkey came from. And he said it, came from the refrigerator in the back. And I said, no, where was this turkey raised? And he was very confused for a while. But that just goes to show that we are very disconnected from where our food comes from. So ask yourself next time you're eating, how far has this food traveled to get to my plate, and how far is it from its original form? And if you can shorten that distance on both of those things, then you're doing pretty good. So there's a lot of good research about engaging with farmers markets and the food system around you. It increases fruit and vegetable consumption, not only in rural areas but also in urban neighborhoods and different population groups. And when you're shopping local, you're also supporting local farmers. You're supporting the local economy. You're reducing the greenhouse gas emissions associated with that food. And as I said before, you're getting a healthier and often, in my opinion, tastier product. So again, guys, there's some links in here. A website that I love is called Local Harvest, and I believe this is a national website. You can put in your zip code, and it tells you every community-supported agriculture CSA program, every farmer's market in the area. Nowadays, there's delivery right to your door, which is great, especially in the COVID pandemic. So two things that are great is Hungry Harvest, which I believe was started from a graduate of the University of Maryland, and also the Misfit Market, and you guys probably know of many more. But these are sort of imperfect produce delivery companies. As Nick mentioned, that a lot of this produce is thrown away a shocking amount, simply just because it's not supermarket pretty, and the stuff is still as nutritious, is just as good, and it can be delivered to your door. So that's another great service as well. And when we get down to actually making the meal, 4 S's of easy meal planning, because my college students always want to know how can we make good food without a lot of resources or time. So I say scramble, smoothies, salads, and stews. And again, we can go into hours of discussing how to make these foods. But these are 4 things that you can put a lot of ingredients into. They can change with the season. You can get creative. A lot of times you can transport these to wherever you need to go. So educate yourself, have fun with it. Some other tips for success. First you have to take control of your food environment. So if you're not the one bringing the food into the household, then it's going to be very difficult to change your eating. So be the one planning, shopping, prepping. Get out there and educate yourself on this information that we've provided you. Get your chef skills up, learn how to procure the food, how to prepare the food, go out and find some recipes. Tracking your intake, I think, is a good practice. People have mixed feelings about this. Calorie counting is not an exact science. In fact, it's far from it, 20% off, really, up or down. And I don't do it for the numbers, I do it for the mindfulness of it. So when you write down what you eat, or I have my students actually take pictures of what they eat, it connects it and makes it real, and you're gonna start paying attention more. It's important to do this slowly. We are often motivated to wake up Monday morning and have our lives change, and I think we all know that doesn't work that way. So pick one meal. They have the meatless Mondays, or they have the whatever, and start to slowly change these things until eventually it's seamless. I tell everybody one thing a week. You make one change, and after about 6 to 8 weeks, you have a completely sustainable diet, and it doesn't seem like that big of a deal. Embrace culture, so try different cultural dishes, different spices. Again, local seasonal stuff is the way to go. When you are shopping, some strategies: shop around the perimeter of the grocery store. I'm sure you've heard this before. Grocery stores are laid out that way by design because that stuff moves in and out quickly. The stuff in the catacombs of the center of the grocery store can stay there forever. I think a Twinkie can stay on the shelf for about 30 years. So be suspicious of that, please. And prepare the food, take it with you. Set yourself up for success. Eating more is the key, not necessarily less. And this gets into sort of a body composition discussion. But we tend to think of eating less as eating less food, and that's not true. When you eat, nutrient-dense foods like vegetables and whole grains, and not the processed calorically dense foods, you can actually eat more food and be completely satisfied, and not gain weight, most likely probably lose body fat and be healthier in general, and always stay active and have fun. So I think that's where we end, at least my portion of it.
Yeah.
Nick, do you want to chime back in?
Yeah, I'll jump back in. I don't know if we can pull this main screen back up with all the people. There we go. So I just want to say at the end, first of all, thank you, Professor Minkovsky, and thank you, Professor Krausz. We're going to keep working together and keep producing similar things for you, for all of you. I just say, in closing, I just want to mention, as an ethics professor, I always ask myself questions along the lines of, ultimately, like, is this necessary? Can I do better? Can we cause less harm? Right? And the answers are, no, it's not necessary, right? We can do better. We can cause less harm to both other humans, ourselves, and the environment at large. In thinking about it and thinking about our diet this way really does help me at an existential level deal with that ecological despair that I experience when I think about just how massive these problems of climate change and all those other pollution, all these other things I mentioned at the beginning. It helps me manage them better, and I hope it helps you as well. And I hope this offered you some tips and some reasons to maybe trying to alter your diet for, in a more sustainable way. So thank you all for joining us. We're going to hang on the line, ask to answer any questions or to just have an open discussion with anyone who is interested. So you're more than welcome to hang on the line. Otherwise, you can get out of here if you want. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. This is a pleasure.
I have a question. This is Jacqueline. If anyone is interested in having your PowerPoints, is that possible?
It will be posted,
Yes.
correct?
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We can, I
All
guess,
right.
if there's a way if we can post it with sustainable, well, we can email it or post it somewhere. Yeah.
Okay, so if anyone on the call is interested, just email me, Jacqueline Bullard, jbullard@ccbcmd.edu, and I'll make sure I'll get it to you, okay?
I think I can upload something to the chat.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Okay,
Just,
great, thank you.
Put that in the chat.
Can someone, yeah, I have to save this.
So you guys can decide at what point you want to end the recording.
Okay. Well, is there like a hand raise situation? Because I usually sometimes different. Yeah, you can raise your hand. Does anybody have any questions or any, want any tips or any input? Anybody hungry? So let me ask you, what's for lunch?
Right.
Well, we'll be mindful when we eat, that's for sure.
Think about it. It's a wonderful thing. Don't stress about it. You got to embrace this and enjoy it. I'm all about having fun.
Yeah, I see you have a hand raised.
Yes. Let's see here. Do I click on them?
In the chat, we have a question. What do you think of is that Aqua Bounty?
Yeah, Aqua Bounty. What's that?
I'm unfamiliar.
Yes, me either.
I lack thought of it because I don't know it.
Is that like aquaponics? Do you mean, or?
Oh, genetically modified salmon.
Oh yes. Yeah, I mean, yeah, GMOs are definitely a point of contention and a point of concern. I think time will tell. I'm cautious of it. I'm suspicious of it. Yeah, I think the FDA just approved the first genetically engineered salmon, last year or the year before, for consumption. And a lot of times these things are modified so they can feed them grain, so they can feed them corn. It's a problem of we have too much, and so we created solutions for our problems. We have too much corn, so now we're engineering salmon to eat corn. I just always go back to evolution. It's not the way it was supposed to be. We probably just shouldn't do it. I mean, time will tell. Anybody else have any opinions? But I'm suspicious.
Christina just posted Frankenfish, quote unquote, is mostly problematic because it's grown close to coal power plants and they eat corn, less nutrition. So yeah, thank you. Yeah.
And I mean, Nick, I think you brought up a good point. We have to be understanding that, our increases in agricultural production has served many. I mean, we have fed a lot of people with these techniques of artificial fertilizers. So let's not lose sight of that. But the problem is, in our efforts to do that, we have done great harm. And so now we need to, in my opinion, backpedal. And there is a way to make it better, but we need to pay attention first and make some, systemic changes. But I don't want to lose sight of the fact that more people were able to be fed, so we have to acknowledge that, and we just can't, naysay everything that has been done, in my opinion.
No, I agree.
Well, from my standpoint, every GMO that is out there has its problems that are bigger than the benefits they provide. It's exactly just like you said. First, we come up with some sort of a problem that can be actually solved in other ways, like the problem of golden rice, which we genetically engineer rice to produce vitamin A. Well, instead, we could actually change the agriculture to produce more fruits and vegetables so that people actually get the vitamin A, or change economic system that would incentivize production fruits and vegetable at the expense of more refined grains.
Yeah, I think I'm sorry. Just to compound that, I was just going to say, addressing incentives and government subsidies is obviously an issue that's related to this as well. When you look at corn farmers essentially getting paid to produce certain crops, it means we're fighting an uphill battle.
Absolutely, it's a governmental issue for sure, and I think what Professor Minkovsky said, in science, we tend to try to reduce things down to its simplest terms so we can manipulate it and extract it and then change it and then apply it to the greater good. But nutrition isn't really like that. I mean, there's so much we don't know about food, and I think we need to admit that. I mean, we have identified many nutrients, but nutritional science is new compared to most sciences. We're talking only about the past 100 years, and some of these things only the past 50 years we're getting a better understanding of. And a lot of these phytonutrients and polyphenols and things that, there's a reason why supplemental vitamin D might not be as good as, is naturally derived vitamin D. You know, there's just, we can't extract things down to its simplest terms and then add it to a pill and take it. You know, what we do know is that healthier soil makes healthier food, and that makes healthier populations. And so when we try to make these genetically modified things, you know, there are things that are left out, even if it's not on the label.
Yeah. Rama, we had a question from Rama. Yeah. Hi, Rama. Nice to see you or hear from you.
Hi. Thank you so much for a very great and very important presentation. I have a passion for healthy lifestyle and healthy nutrition, and I'm studying nutrition the right way right now. So it's amazing to see how it's connected. Like when you eat healthy, you're helping the environment. And and I feel like we're seeing a shift right now where people are more educated. Like they're trying to educate themselves more about the food that they eat. I just wanted to say that as a mother, my kids still want to eat meat and they still want to eat chicken. So I really don't care for meat or chicken. If I eat vegetable all day, every day, it's fine with me. But I can't impose this for on my kids. So what I did, I decided just to kind of agree on eating meat less, maybe once a week, and then the rest I can be creative with cooking vegetables in a way that they like, or maybe incorporate like more raw food, like, you know, fruits and vegetables, and encourage them to eat healthy. So I feel like as mothers, we really struggle with this. I mean, you are educated, you learn about the harm the processed food does to your kids. And for me, like 2 years ago, it was like a shock when I learned about all this processed food and the poison I'm giving my kids. And I'm like, wow, I'm really poisoning my kids every single day. So I can't unlearn it now. And I keep telling my kids, they tell me, Mom, you're crazy. I said, you know, call me crazy, but I can't unlearn this. I learned it now that it's harming you, and I can't keep harming you. So yeah, for all those mothers, I know that you're struggling there, but just reducing maybe the meat to once a week. That's, you know, I guess kind of like you meet your kids in the middle. But thank you so much.
I can relate. Yeah, I can relate as a father. I'm sorry, Natasha, do you want to go?
No, I just said it's a great suggestion.
Yeah. And like I said, I mean, we have to be realistic about it. I'm a father of two, and for some reason, my daughter loves sausage. I don't know why, but she could eat sausage every day if I let her. And you know, it's not something to stress about. You know, I think you're doing the right thing. You know, you have to be the nutritional champion in your family, and I have found that if you get them involved in the process and every step of the process, you know, they're going to be a lot more willing. You know, get them involved. You know, I get a little nervous when they get around the big knives, but other than that, you know, let them prep the food, let them make the food, and tell them why it's important, but also find that nice balance point of not stressing them out or making them feel morally, you know, upset about it, you know, about eating this or that. It's a challenge. It is a struggle, you know.
Yeah. And my older daughter, she's 22, and she cooks when I work. So I ask her to cook. And one day I actually took out some chicken and I said, why didn't you cook the chicken? She said, it's hard to cook. So I decided just to make vegetables. I said, see, even it's hard to cook. I mean, it's hard to cook.
I mean, that's the other thing too. It's easy. It is. You know, eat it raw. Yeah, for sure.
Luckily, I haven't dealt with that problem myself. My daughter doesn't. She just recoils at the idea of eating animals. She's a vegetarian for the animals, not for the environment. I'm a vegetarian for the environment, not the animals. Well, the animals matter a little too, right? Sure. But she just is disgusted by the idea. She really took to heart those, you know, we raise our children to love animals. You see the farm animals, and they have the little petting zoos, and they get to, you know, play with all the animals, and they fall in love with them, and we teach our children to love these things. And then for lunchtime, we feed them one of those animals. And I think, and that hit her hard. She was like, what? This doesn't make any sense. So she's making it easier on us, on us so far, right? Like, hopefully we'll see what happens. She's only 5, so, but yeah. So
did you have another question, Ram?
Okay, so Rama's heading out. So it is 12:03. So are there any other questions before we go ahead and head out?
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. So we'll just go ahead and looks like we'll just go ahead and close it out. But thank you everyone for joining us. It was great.
Thank
Great to see
you.
Yep,
Thank
great
you.
presenting with you too, and look forward to a future collaborations.
Right,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Me too.
All right, have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. It was awesome. This is Jacqueline.
All right, thank you.
All right,
Thank you very much.
Thanks for
Everybody
helping, Jacqueline.
appreciate
stay
it.
safe.
Okay.
All right,
Mhm. Bye.
this is out. Now I'm going to hit leave, and I have the recording lit up. So hopefully I'm going to save that.
Okay. And just send it to me. Okay. Thanks. Have a great day.